This is Holding Left Edge with Christian and Simon.
Nice.
Sexual.
We're going.
We are back again.
Serious face now. Good evening. Welcome to episode 8, that many, of Holding Left Edge, the shooting podcast that deals with the spin from the UK. Of course, I'm Simon. Over there is Christian. Say hello, Christian.
Hi, everybody. Did you miss me?
Immensely. It's good to have you back.
It's good to be back. You've been having some controversial conversations. What's been going on?
I've been speaking to people I haven't spoken to before, and I've been hearing things from people I've not heard from in a long time. Not directly, but it's been an interesting few weeks. And I'm not going to lie to you, the rebel in me is happy to see people talking about things that weren't being talked about. So it's never.
I remember when we first set out to make this podcast, and we were talking about content, and you were keen that we discussed some topics that might not sit comfortably with certain people, but it was about, and I guess that's where your intro about dealing with the spin, as you always introduce the podcast, comes from, because it's about tackling some of those topics that, again, might make some people feel a little bit uncomfortable, but it's about addressing some of these things that people are talking about, maybe not talking about in open, but things that are getting discussed and are being talked about. And, you know, let's bring it out into the open and have a debate, a conversation, a dialogue about it.
And there are a lot of people out there with strong opinions and views on everything. This sport, this discipline within sport being one of them. I have some strong views, but I'd like to think that my views are about as fair as they can be. But also, I'll be the first to admit that I don't like people that push agendas in the wrong way, and I don't like bullies. I've said that for a long time. I don't like people that behave like children when they're dealing with other adults. So I can't hide those things sometimes, and I don't think I want to be honest, because I like to see those people uncomfortable. I like to see all the little messages flying about afterwards saying what a knobhead and all that sort of stuff. It's great because A, they watch the podcast, and B, they got the message I was trying to tell them.
It gets people talking, that's for sure.
Absolutely. We're here. I mean, tonight you wanted to do this since. We were going to do a podcast with you in America, weren't we? That was the plan.
Yeah, but that whole campaign, I needed to stay focused on Team Great Britain and the event at the World Championships. So, yeah, it would have been nice to have squeezed it in and have that on location podcast. But just too.
I'll be honest. We're going to do. We haven't even thought about it yet, but we'll do that in the UK next year for the 2-2 Worlds. We'll be on location in some way, shape, or form, live streaming and all that sort of nonsense. It would have been good, and then it was only a matter of time before we sat down and talked about the States and the Worlds and how it went. We couldn't get our sort of stars to line up the last few weeks, and then I had the podcast with Rob. And there's anyone that listened to or watched that podcast, because I'm learning people do listen and watch these in different mediums, we'll see that Rob had a few valid points to make, and he wanted to get that off his chest, and he did a good job of it. So this one got pushed a little bit further down the road, but it's still something I'm really keen to hear how you got on. It looked amazing, mate. I mean, for those people that weren't probably paying as close attention as some of us were, do you want to just tell us exactly what happened?
Yeah, so first of all, I'll apologise to anybody watching this on YouTube, because my webcam, for some reason, has decided to go into autofocus, and it's already making me feel a bit seasick. I am washing down my Johnny Walker Black Label, my one drink that I'm having tonight, with a non-alcoholic beer. But that, I'll tell you what, that autofocus is making me feel a bit seasick. So, yeah, I mean, as people will probably know, I qualified along with Luca, my son, as part of Team Great Britain. that went out to Colorado in September to shoot in the International Precision Rifle Federation World Championships. I was shooting in factory division. Luca was shooting in junior division, although he's the most unjunior looking
like a grown man.
Human on this planet anymore, with his beard and his gut.
And just for the benefit of people in podcast land, that's junior open division.
Yeah,
so
junior open
in the open.
Yeah. Every division in the IPRF rule book is an open division, unless you're shooting in factory division. Yeah, and mate, I mean, massive honour to shoot for my country, for my nation. Massive honour to shoot alongside in that team with some of the best precision rifle shooters, not just in the UK, but in the world. If you have a look at the results of the Great Britain team on that leaderboard of 266 shooters, again, we had shooters that were in, that the upper echelons of the performance there. So massive, just I was pinching myself all the way through the whole experience out in Colorado in the United States, just to be there and with the people that I was with. It was an awesome experience.
Good. So you were out with the team. How many went across, did you say?
So we had a full team of 6 open shooters, full team of 4 in factory. Junior wasn't a full team in terms of qualification. Not in terms of registering a team score for the World Championships. You need a minimum of 3 for that. In all the divisions, apart from open, you need 4. Two in junior, 1 in ladies. We had a full team of 4, I think, in military. I think we had a team of 2 or 3 in limited. Seniors, we had 2 in seniors, I think. So considering we were 4,500-5,000 miles away from the UK, it was a good turnout in terms of the size of the Great Britain team, and to rival the size of the team that we took out to France in the first year of the World Championships. And obviously, we covered more divisions in Italy last year in the 2-2 World Championships, but still a really good turnout for the team.
I mean, cost is we talk about cost all the time. America is possibly the most expensive place that could have been pulled out of the hat. South Africa would have been expensive as well, almost on a par, but the cost of going to America is up there with the rest of them. The reality probably is, if that cost wasn't as high, there'd have been other people that had gone.
I think so.
And again, it highlights something Rob and I spoke about in the past about trying to secure funding to support these people going to these events, because there's lots of money sloshing around. So it's a very worthwhile endeavour, anyone that's trying to find funding for these athletes, I'm going to call them, because we've moved on from shooters now. These athletes to go up and compete against other athletes from across the globe. So,
and the reality is that if there'd have been full funding there for the team, or more funding there for the team, whatever the source of that was to be, we'd have definitely had more shooters go along. We probably could have filled up the team. As we know, we qualified enough people in every division to send out a full team, but people did pull out on cost grounds mostly.
Yeah, there's one for the future.
Yeah,
The range. I mean, the range looked unreal. I have a few friends who've been out there in the past, just doing schools and range days and stuff. Do you want to just tell us about where you were shooting?
Yeah, so Cameo Shooting and Education Complex. It's a government-owned range, which means it's effectively owned by the people, and it's had a lot of investment put into it, and they've created a world-class facility there with static 100 meter, 50 meter, 100 meter, 200 meter ranges, but then just this absolute expanse of open land up in the Mesa County with amazing backstops, amazing backstops. Never seen backstops like them. But you can just shoot pretty much at all angles safely, loads of space, loads of opportunity to set up the ranges you wanted. There was the static ranges with covered firing points up to 200 meters if you wanted to shoot on the flat, but then you could then shoot out to up to 600 meters on some of those ranges if you were shooting at high angle, nearly 25 degrees up into the side of the mountains, the side of the mesas. And then there was another range where we spent our 1 hour as a team doing our zeroing and dope confirmation, where you could shoot out to, I think it was 2 kilometers. We understood as competitors that the match wouldn't go beyond about 1,000 yards. So most people were happy just to spend the day truing up their dope to 1,000 yards. But you could have shot out to 2 kilometers if you wanted to on that session. And some people did try the hand with it. And truing up your dope, I will say, while you were there, was very important to do. Density altitude in the UK, 400, 500 meters, wherever you go.
Yeah.
Over there, 2,500 meters for density altitude. The difference in the air density was crazy.
And am I right in saying there were some people that were running ammo for the first time, or certainly using ammo they didn't use regularly in the UK?
Yeah, so myself and Luca, we usually run Cellier and Bellet 142 grain match ammunition, which we've had excellent results with. Over there, we were running 140 grain ELDMs, factory ammo again. A lot of other shooters over there actually went with custom-made ammunition. There's a gentleman over there. Oh, his name's escaped me. I should have written it down if I knew the question was coming.
Sorry, man.
But all good. But he supplied quite a lot of the Great Britain team with custom-made ammunition, and to a man, everybody found that shot really well. And actually, he supplies a lot of precision rifle shooters over in the States with ammunition. And I understand, well, I know that you're going to be supplying custom-made ammunition for the new year, hopefully.
Yeah, up sooner probably. I'm surrounded by dies. Everywhere I look, there's dies everywhere.
So a little.
I don't know how it works. Yeah. So that's it's certainly. I mean, you can put that guy's thing in the bottom, can't you? You can say who he is and put his website and all that good stuff in there with the wonders of technology. But yeah, I think custom ammunition is definitely something that more people should be using. A lot of people do their own load, and I get it.
Well, I've said to you, haven't I? Just get me a barrel's worth of 153 grain Hornady DA tips. Work me up a load that works well in my rifles, and that'll be me. I won't shoot anything else going forward.
Yeah, you're not the only person. That's a conversation for another day, though. So you went out there. The range was, I mean, the pictures were amazing. How was it as an event? How was it run? Because we've both been involved in running events before.
Yeah.
We saw firsthand how France was run, which was the inaugural Worlds, well, the Centre Fire inaugural Worlds. How did it compare? How was it run as an event?
So I guess the project of putting on the match was organised by Greg Bell of the United States Precision Rifle Association. Greg's a great guy, and he put a lot of his blood, sweat, and tears into putting on that match and making sure it was the huge success that it was. And nobody should thank him enough. He did a great job there. But he was supported by a great team that he had around us, and I'm not going to be able to name everybody, but you had Ken Wheeler, who runs the Precision Rifle series, who was there supporting. You had 2 fantastic match directors as well, that were selected to put on the match, and the match was absolutely phenomenal. I've never competed in anything like that before in my limited experience, but shooters, with a lot more experience of shooting a lot more different matches in different locations, were all saying to a man, best course of fire that they've ever shot. the effort that went into it truly was world class. You're talking about one day, like a real field style type of match, shooting off rocks and different natural terrain with different wind calls on different targets, because you're shooting 1 minute a target to your right, the next minute a target to your left. You're shooting at crazy angles. 1 minute you're shooting up 20 degrees up, then you're moving 90 degrees and shooting 20 degrees down into a valley. It's just crazy. And then the temperature changes during the day, because we were starting the shooting at 7:30 in the morning. By the time you got, in the desert, so it starts off cold. Then by the time you're at midday and still another 2 or 3 hours worth of shooting left to go through, the temperature swing has been crazy. So you have to keep on top of your ballistics in regards to that, your environmentals. Then you had all the challenges of the dust, the heat, the mirage, the rocky terrain that made it really difficult to acquire your targets. Day two, depending on what day you were shooting on, whether it was your day one or your day two. But for me, day two was more of what I would class as a traditional type of precision rifle type match, with your tank traps and shooting off obstacles and barricades that have been more put in place specifically for that game, for that match. Whereas, like I say, day one had more of a field to it. But yeah, absolutely amazing match. Small, tiny targets. A lot of the top shooters were saying couldn't believe the distances involved and the size of the targets. I mean, here in the UK, all the precision rifle matches nowadays are shot on a square range, pretty much very narrow arc of fire between targets, all within about 500 yards, 500 meters. We got over there and we were shooting out to 900 yards, all different arcs of fire, different angles. It was a proper challenge, a real challenge.
And I imagine there's some people that had never shot that distance before.
Well, you'd hope with the best shooters in the world that a lot of them would have done, but
well, I mean, from the GB point of view, I mean, if you've got into precision rifle recently, shooting competitions, and you've been limited to pro shoot, those people that wouldn't have done the Orion days and the Bodmin days, I mean, crikey, we were lobbing stuff out to sort of 900 odd, weren't we, at Orion back in the day?
Yeah. I mean,
that's a skill in itself.
Down matches, I think, have gone out to a maximum of about 800 yards. So unless you shot one of those matches, if all you've shot is the pro shoot matches under PRS UK, you wouldn't have shot at those distances. Definitely not.
Or certainly those angles.
Yeah. No, that's very true, because even at Eskdale, you were shooting the big CIS matches, you weren't really shooting at angles.
No. Good. Well, it sounds fantastic.
Yeah, and we're very used to shooting in the rain over here. Over there, you had this really fine dust, and if you had any grease on any of your bolt or something like that, and the dust got into that, it just hardened like cement and just seized everything up. So managing your equipment was paramount, making sure that you're protecting your equipment through the match. So my rifle stayed in the case. The only time it came out of the case was when I was getting up ready to shoot. I had a couple of problems on day one, just with a scope base coming loose. Now, I don't know whether that was down to me, or it was down to something else. I don't know. But that was something that I had to rectify. But yeah, it was. There was a few people with a few challenges because of the conditions at the match. Yeah,
I mean, absolutely on here. There's an argument for a sort of international competition for a period of acclimatization, isn't there? I know a few people that shoot competitively at international level who will spend a week in country beforehand acclimatizing.
A lot of Great Britain team did. So and some shoots from some other countries as well. Paul Dallin who, if you remember, came second place in the two World Championships last year. He missed out by about 15 seconds against the win. Across 2 days of shooting 20 stages. Paul puts on what is considered the hardest precision rifle match in the States in terms of the intensity. It's called the Nut Crusher, and he did a half Nut Crusher, so it's 1 day of shooting a condensed format of the full 2 day match that was shot the weekend before on his own range, I understand. And quite a few of the Great Britain team who had the time and the opportunity to go over to the States early, they went to that match. And Ben Wood did very well at that event. And for a lot of the shooters, a lot of the team, that really like got them keyed in and ready for the match, because I think that was only an hour or two away from Cameo. Cameo was near Grand Junction, like I say, in the Mesa County in Colorado. Yeah.
Sorry, mate. Go on. I thought you were in full flow then.
No.
Yeah, I mean, so I think I do. I mean, the acclimatization, that's all part of that planning piece, that funding piece, isn't it? In a perfect world, people get an infinite amount of time off work. They'd have an infinite amount of money, and all these things just get you a little bit more acclimatized to a new environment, because we've had it over here where people are used to shooting in one bit of the country. And even, I think I've always said we've had 3 phases in this country. We've had the warm south, I mean, shooting roundhouse at Bodmin in shorts and flip-flops.
Yeah.
We know wind. And then going over to Wales and getting a mixture of everything in a day, and then going up to Scotland. And there's people that have never shot up at Estelmuir and seen rain coming in sideways. Yeah. So there's a lot to be said for shooting in lots of different environments. Lots of different humidities, temperatures. Altitude's another big one, for a lot of people. Altitude throws a lot of people. You go to Sealgare and start getting up on the hills, and it's a whole different way of looking at things.
And what was interesting about this match was the complexity of each stage. There was a few stages that were very familiar. There was a precision rifle series and skills stage, for example. 2 targets, 10 positions, 10 rounds. Every stage was 10 rounds. It was standardized just to make it as level a playing field as possible across the day. And that's like the sort of thing, bread and butter, that you're going to shoot at every precision rifle match. But then some of the stages were multiple positions, multiple targets, multiple angles, multiple distances, different size targets, different difficulties of being able to locate, some targets in shadow, some targets, no targets painted, all just grey, just left alone. Because what they don't want to do is have freshly painted targets
for the first shooters.
After one stage, they're all dirty, and there's no advantage for anybody then, is there? It's all disadvantage for the people after them. So
it's not like you send Dale out with his spray can and his quad bike, just spray them all up every round.
Yeah. And the match was so well organised. You had a great media team. I mean, obviously, media officer for the IPRF, a role I've been doing for 2 years and 9 months now. But obviously, I'm shooting. So Marcus, the president of the IPRF, got in touch with Camden Powers, who does the media for Precision Rifle Series over in the States, and asked if she'd support on the media. Camden's very active as a shooter. She was at the World Championships last year and also doing media. And she did a fantastic job of managing the social media accounts of the IPRF, the USPRA, getting around, taking all of the photos. I mean, if anybody's had a look at some of my Instagram posts recently, my YouTube videos since I've got back, there's a great photo on there that Camden took. Just the media work that she did was absolutely amazing. The catering was fantastic. ROs were all experienced, top of the game, precision rifle shooters that if they'd have been shooting in that match, they'd have been up there with the best shooters at that competition. Cameo range so well organised and run. The sponsors that helped out and contributed and everything. It was a massive team effort. I'm probably missing out a lot of people, but Yeah, such a well-run event. The event, the match itself was that well run that actually it added an element of pressure for all the shooters because
nothing was going wrong.
Because the scoring, well, yeah, the scoring, the spotting, the scoring, the arrowing, moving the shooters through the stages, getting them onto the next stage. The flow of the match was that quick. You just did not have a chance to catch your breath, and that added pressure onto the shooters. So
that's a rhythm and experience thing, isn't it? You run an event. I know myself. You run an event, and you have a sort of a stutter between stages and a stutter between transitions. They're running things. They're running these events with 100 people 2 or 3 times a month, sometimes at some of these venues. These are well down the road. I mean, I always say we're 5 or 6 years behind the States in everything, and they've been running these events. Region, I mean, crikey, they must have 20 or 30 ranges they can use across the US, and they're all running events all the time. Local stuff, PRF stuff, NRL Hunter stuff, NRL stuff, and yeah, they're certainly well drilled. So I'm glad it went well.
I felt that mine and Luca's preparation was, my preparation would have been better if I hadn't swapped out my rifle and scope a month before. And there's no doubt about that. But in terms of everything else that we needed to do in terms of our logistics, our equipment, our gear to get out there and be ready for the match, other than maybe getting out there earlier if work had allowed, which it didn't, then I think our preparation was pretty spot on. But unfortunately, we had a 24-hour delay with our flight.
That wasn't cool, was it?
By the time we turned up, we flew into Denver, picked up the hire car, drove the 4.5, 5 hours over to Grand Junction. We were getting into the hotel at like 1, 2 o'clock in the morning. Jet lagged, not having the time to acclimatize in that high altitude, arid, dusty desert environment, and I was absolutely couldn't sleep throughout the week. I was running on adrenaline. I mean, there was plenty of adrenaline.
We were having conversations in UK time, weren't we? I was coming on thinking, why is Christian talking to me on WhatsApp with a 5-hour difference? And you were just up, just doing stuff. At one point, didn't you suggest we do a podcast at like a stupid time?
Yeah.
Up anyway, but like, nah, mate, go to bed.
I couldn't. I was getting like 3 hours sleep a night, so it was. And when we were, and like I say, when we were shooting the match, we were traveling to the range in the dark. Yeah. We were loading all of our rifling gear into the side by sides in the dark, driving up to the firing points, and it was like 7:30 shooting started. Just as the sun was starting to peak over the top of the mesa. But then you were done by 2 o'clock, less shooters on our days, or more shooters on the open shooting days. So they were taking about an hour or so longer than us to get through all the stages, but we were done shooting by 2 o'clock each day. But it was an intense day. Each day was very, very intense. But then you had the excitement of the opening ceremony, doing the parade with the Union Jack, lining up with all of the other countries. Really motivational speeches by the sheriff of Mesa County, Ken Wheeler, Greg Bell, other people, title sponsors and so on. And then obviously you had then closing ceremony, but there was lots of stuff put on by the sponsors during the day. We got to shoot a 50 BMG, fully automatic rifles, Glocks. It was just like it was literally like a celebration of shooting, just like a week and a bit, 10 days of just shooting. It was absolutely, we're going to the public range, which was fun in itself, shooting out at 2 kilometers, looking for prairie dogs. It was just brilliant.
Brilliant. As an unintentional segue, because you just threw it out there, you talked about your preparation. You talked about the one thing that disadvantaged you was the fact that you had to change platforms at relatively short notice. I mean, I'm guessing you listened to last week's podcast with Rob, and I have views on it as Rob does. Ultimately, you had a Bergara Elite that as a simpleton, I'll play simpleton for a second. I know some people will think that's quite an easy thing to believe, but you had a rifle that a lot of people were looking at thinking it was going to be a factory rifle, certainly by IPRF standards. I was certainly of that opinion, and I've sold loads of them. You then found yourself in a position where you had the realization that this thing wasn't going to be factory compliant. So you had to come up with a plan B, which was the good old trusty HMR. That is a bit of a curveball, that, isn't it? Just how did you sort of deal with that then?
Well, I guess first of all, as people might or might not know, I've been media officer for the GVPRA until I stepped aside in April of this year, and media officer also, and sitting on the executive committee of both these organisations, of the International Precision Rifle Federation as well. So I've got what I would class as a good understanding of what factory division rules require from a rifle. Now, I'm not a gunsmith. I'm not that technically minded. I don't know much about. I know you and Rob have been discussing things like intellectual property rights and proprietariness and all that sort of stuff. I have listened to the previous podcast, and I'm not as well educated as other people in those matters, and don't necessarily maintain an opinion on some of those matters either. But I knew that the Elite was one of those rifles that, due to the trigger and due to the chassis, shouldn't make factory division. I had hoped that it would, but from my understanding of the factory rules, I didn't believe it would. I sought clarification on that from the IPRF. I was confirmed that it didn't meet factory division rules. So my plan was to stick with my trusty HMR, Bigara B14 HMR 65 Creedmoor. Now, again, could my preparations have been better if I hadn't swapped out my HMR so close to the match, because the barrel burnt out at the wrong time on my old one? It had been coming, and maybe I should have made this arrangement a bit sooner to swap it out, if being honest. But it was the right thing to do at the time. It was a rifle I was very, very familiar with anyway. I actually took it as an opportunity to get a slightly longer barrel. I went with a 26-inch barrel, which gave me more balance on the rifle. So actually swapping that out at that stage, considering I was shooting different ammo anyway than what I was used to, that was probably the biggest change, the swap to Hornady ammo from S&B ammo. So actually, I think that was a good move that I made at the time. The scope, the change from my IOR to my Schmidt & Bender PM2 high performance was probably a riskier move, so close to the match. But actually, that worked out to my advantage as well, because I actually found that I settled into that scope very quickly. I shot a few matches with it, settled into it very quickly, did a lot of dry fire practice with it. And then the advantages that gave me in terms of a step up in glass quality and an improvement in things like the field of view and so on, better reticle, more designed for precision rifle shooting. Actually, it worked out to my advantage. So it was a risky move, but worked out well in the end.
And there were a few people that, I mean, there's the one chap who got as far as landing in America with his Elite, to be told, sorry, you can't shoot that in factory, which I think it's a communication breakdown born out of honest intentions. But so not everyone got the memo, did they?
Yeah, so I think so that was Giovanni, so a fellow Team Bigara shooter from Italy. He was entered into factory division with his Elite, Bigara Premier Elite. I think it was a 6.5 Creedmoor as well, the same as mine. He had, I understand, he had been told by the Italian Precision Rifle Association that it met factory division requirements. So he went over there with all of the believing that it did meet factory. And I remember we were walking, we saw each other in the car park, and I like Giovanni, he's a great guy. So I was like straight over there with a cuddle. And then I said, "Oh, you're going to the factory way, and you're going for your factory checks. We're going over there now." And he's like, "Yeah, I'm going over as well." And he said, "Why aren't you bringing your Premier Elite?" And I was like, "Have you brought yours?" And he was like, "Well, yeah." And I
Were you worried then, thinking you missed an opportunity to bring yours?
and I'm thinking, "Oh, damn, could I have used it?" And I'm thinking, "No, I'm pretty sure I'm right. It's not factory." And Giovanni was like, "Yeah, I've been told by the Italian Association it's factory." So we both got over there, both put our rifles on the floor next to each other, and then they came out to be checked. And yeah, mine was cleared within like 5 minutes. Yeah, you're good, Christian. They put a little blue cable tie around the scope and snip that off. That's to indicate that it's been checked and it's factory division legal. And Giovanni was still there like an hour later while they were discussing the trigger and the stock and stuff like that. And eventually they did have to give him the unfortunate news that it wasn't factory compliant, which thankfully didn't turn into the drama that it could have turned into, because luckily the Italian team was undersubscribed in their military and law enforcement team division, and Giovanni's in law enforcement in Italy. So he was able to step over into that division with his Bagara Premier League, because every other division is a factory, is an open division. So that worked out okay in the end. But yeah, that could have been a little bit. I think what we'd have had to have done is we'd have had to have said, put me and Giovanni in the same squad, and then we'd have had to have shared my rifle, which I'd have been quite happy to do.
It's not something we've not done before, is it?
Well, yeah. I mean, I shared rifles with Luca for a long time, didn't I? When he was getting into the sport.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know what your thoughts are. I mean, I made a sort of ham-fisted effort to explain why you weren't with us last week. Christian did give me an actual form of words in relation to why he wasn't coming in the last one, and I tried to explain it at the end of the podcast. You were in quite a difficult position for two reasons. You're a full ticket sponsored shooter in terms of firearms, in that you're given firearms by manufacturers because they like you and they see that you're one of the good guys. That's my view on it. But you also at the time had a sort of front row seat in the IPRF and some of the moves and things that were going on. I mean, we'll talk about the IPRF and where you are now in the world later, but just if you want to explain to people more articulately than I did why you weren't with us last week, because I think that'd be a fair thing for people to understand.
So first of all, I am very mindful when I perform any role that I need to not have a conflict of interest. And if I do have a conflict of interest, I need to make sure that that's declared. And I also need to make sure that I shouldn't be involved in any decision-making process, or certainly, maybe involved in debate and discussion, but I shouldn't be involved in actually taking any of those decisions if I've got a conflict of interest. So I am a sponsored shooter with a factory. Okay, we're talking about factory division here. I compete in factory division. Therefore, although I would like to think that my opinion on the direction of factory division as a factory division shooter, I'd like to hope that my opinion on it is listened to. I don't think I should have any say in what the rules are for factory division in terms of a voting rule. And
it's turkeys voting for Christmas, isn't it?
Yeah. So I've got to consider that. And although I've been party to certain debates with the IPRF about factory division rules, and I was involved in a vote once, and then actually after that vote, I actually got in touch with Marcus, the president, and just said, "Look, Marcus, I'd like to just have my votes removed from the record. I don't think it influenced the outcome anyway, but I'd like to have that meeting. But I'd just like to make sure that that conflict of interest is acknowledged and doesn't influence on the future direction of the division. Which Marcus was quite he understood, and he was quite happy with my decision on that. So first of all, I think there's that element of it, and certainly in terms of scrutinising what is a factory division rifle and putting it onto any list of what is deemed to be a factory division rifle by the IPRF. I've never been a party to making those assessments and those decisions.
Well, we have subject matter experts for those things, don't we? The reality is we can either all try and be experts on everything, or we can trust the fact that we've got people in the industry, in the sport, who have a better level of understanding than us, so we trust them to make those decisions. Rob Ramsden was the technical, whatever he was, for the IPRF and wrote the rule book for a good reason. It's no different to back in the day when we were trying to work out scoring systems for the GUPRA. We looked at Plum and it was like, well, we need to get Benny Mack in. No one gets it better than Benny. And I think there are those people out there that should be trusted to make those decisions and to advise councils and executives and committees.
Yeah.
So no one would expect you to be an expert in it. I've got an opinion on it, but I'll the first one say I'm not an expert.
Yeah, exactly that. So that was the first thing that I'd say about why I felt like I didn't want to get involved in that conversation that you and Rob had on the previous podcast. The other reason is a more personal reason. So I knew that you were going to be debating a particular rifle that was used at the World Championships that I just shot in, and I'll just say this right from the outset: I haven't looked closely at the debate. I don't have a position on whether that's factory legal or not factory legal. I think
interesting is I didn't have one until I had the conversation with the podcast with Rob, and then I went away and listened to what he said again, and then more interestingly, heard some of the chatter about what's been said since. I have a firm opinion right now. He's not convinced me because he wasn't banging a drum to convince people. He was trying to educate people that may not have understood the subtle nuances of it.
Yeah.
I think I'm more informed now. So that podcast hopefully informed lots of people.
Yeah, and again, I've heard that certain people are saying not factory legal and this is why, but then I've listened to other people who've said is factory legal and this is why. And do you know what? Every person I talk to,
everyone's opinions like arseholes, mate. Everyone's got one.
But everybody I talk to, when I listen to them, I'm like, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And then I listen to somebody else, oh, that makes sense. And you know what? I'm just like that. Okay. I don't have the knowledge and level of expertise to be able to make a decision and opine on this. So I'm quite happy for other people to have that debate.
I'll be the first to admit, you know me, no name, no patrol. We could have spent the last 8 episodes naming people in the sport and the industry and putting a big neon sign over people. Not over Frank, obviously. I'm not putting a neon sign over Frank. That's a different conversation. We put a neon sign over people saying this person is an idiot. This person did this. This person did that. It achieves nothing. I've had lots of discussions with people this past week. People from within the IPRF, people from outside the IPRF, people from within the GUPRA, people from manufacturers, people from... And there's lots of ways to put a position across eloquently. If you're an orator and you're a convincing politician, there's lots of ways to put your point across to get people to say, well, that sounds reasonable. When I hear things like people say, well, it might not be factory, but it's in the spirit of factory, and you can't say that it isn't factory based on what the spirit of factory should be. And there's all these soft sort of ways to try and explain what is clearly a definitive thing. Rob is absolutely right. There should be a list of factory rifles from the off. If it's not one of these, you get it submitted to be assessed well in advance of the event. There's no grey area. And it's discussed. However, what I've learned in the last week is that the process for discussing these things and the way in which it's communicated out to members. So members of international shooting committees or members of domestic shooting organisations, you've got to communicate it out. If you don't communicate it out and there's some element of doubt, expect podcasts like this to ask the question, why is this a grey area? You've allowed this to be a grey area. And I think factories fall foul of this. And I've had lots of clever people try to explain to me why something is or isn't factory this last week. And like you say, wonderful stories. Like, you know what I mean? Cool story, bro. I get it. Well said. Thanks. I'll you know, it can't be ambiguous. It can't be grey areas. It's got to be nailed on. And my personal view on this is that the IPRF have lost its way a little bit in terms of factory, in that the clear-cut thing that you needed to avoid the situation hasn't happened. And I think that was the whole reason Rob was so keen to try and explain to people where he was coming from, because he comes across, Rob will forgive me, sorry Rob comes across as a crank. He comes across as someone that's like so focused and so passionate about it, but that's because he's been banging his head against a brick wall trying to get people to understand his point, and he's just been ignored. And I think he's been ignored because it's a 50-50 split. Some people didn't want to hear what he had to say, and some people didn't agree with him because they were wrong. And we find ourselves where we are now. Going forwards, I'm not going to turn away from what I said in the last podcast. It needs looking at. It needs tidying up. It's a mess. Comms need to get better. People need to start asking questions about whether this is going to be repeated next Worlds, either in 2-2 or in centre fire. And I'd like to think some of the manufacturers get involved in that discussion, because it's a healthy discussion we need to have as grown-ups, not kids bitching on social media, as grown-ups who want to see the sport do well. And over.
Yeah, and look, and I can understand where Rob's passion for this topic comes from, because, you know, Rob for the early years of the IPRF was the driving force behind it. He set it up.
They killed him. Yeah,
he made it happen, and you know, he gave a lot to it. And if he feels that it's not being looked after, then you can sort of understand where his passion and his desire to address these matters comes from. And, you know, you certainly get the impression that he's not going to leave it alone. And while there is a question that is being left unanswered for those people that are asking it, I agree, it needs addressing. I'm not here to address that question, because I don't have the subject matter expertise to be able to answer it one way or the other. And like I say, I don't have a position on it right now, because whenever I talk to people involved in this, without naming names, although we have mentioned Rob.
Rob's put himself on the chopping block. He can't hide now.
Whenever I talk to those individuals, they do put a compelling case forward for why it's one or the other. I'll let other people sort that out. What I would like to say is that the people involved, all the people involved, I've got to know quite well over the past few years, and I've got, you know, respect for all of them. And it's my opinion that I don't think there's any villains in this situation. I think you've got a lot of people that are working and trying to progress things with the best intentions. That's not to say that decisions are the correct decisions and things are being done properly, but I'd definitely say that everybody's got the best intentions of this sport at heart, and my opinion. And I think what we should be doing is whatever comes out of all of this, we should just keep that at the forefront of our minds, and just be a little bit respectful of the individuals involved in it. It's not like I don't think this is like
Spanish Inquisition, is it?
I don't think this is like the early days of the GBPRA.
Peter Steen's blocked them out.
When we had people that were saying, we're doing this because of the benefit of the sport, But what they were actually doing was trying to tear it down because it wasn't the sport that they wanted.
Or make it exactly what they wanted to
I'll make it
fulfill
exactly
their,
what they wanted.
yeah, with
That's
memes
not
and
going
everything.
on here. You have got actors all over this that are well-intentioned, my opinion, well-intentioned,
right.
and we just need to keep that in perspective, I think.
I worded it again. I've spoken to a lot of people this past week, and the people out there that are listening to this that we've had conversations with, who I'm not going to name. You know, I love you, and I'll always be honest with you. And I've said to these people, these are volunteers doing their absolute best. No one is saying anyone has done anything underhanded, but what we're asking is the transparency that you need to demonstrate that's the rank and file public. You and I are fortunate we've got access to a lot of these issues, either first or second hand. The people that are out there who are the supporters of precision rifle internationally or domestically, they're not seeing the stuff behind the scenes. I think they're the people we need to work for, just to reassure them that any chatter, any doubt is based on either, an honest mistake or an honest misunderstanding or a well-intended decision that was made by someone. Because people have to make decisions. I've been there when I've gone, right, I've got to make that decision. And I'm thinking, in 6 months' time, I'm going to know whether I'm right or wrong. But people have got to be bold and make decisions. What you've got to do is be transparent. Certainly when everyone's elected and everyone's voted in, and you've got people at the bottom of the pyramid who are paying monthly subscriptions to be members of the Italian Precision Rifle Federation, the GBPRA, These are the people that pay, who want to be reassured that the structure is healthy, human and prone to error, because that's what we are as humans. None of us are infallible, but we just need that transparency, that discussion, that healthy debate. Do you know what, lads? This didn't work. Let's do this different next time. No one's out. I'm not out to eat anyone's lunch. I just want to make sure that if there's better ways to do things, and we've said this on loads of podcasts, it's about improving things going forwards. It's not about tearing things down and saying, you got that wrong. It's about trying to make it better. Evolution on evolution on evolution. To the point where you're like the Americans, where you're running events at such a high standard, because they had probably some absolute dog shit events when they first started out, but they've learned from it and they've evolved. That's all we're looking to see. Healthy evolution, transparency and discussion. That's it.
Absolutely. There was another.
I don't know what happened then. Did the confetti come down on yours as well?
Just on yours. I'm glad to report, just on your screen. So there was another reason that I frankly didn't want to get involved in this whole debate around the legalities of any of the rifles that were being used in the factory division at the World Championships. And that's because I didn't shoot as well as some of those other factory division shooters,
you'd have won it with an elite.
And I
did not elite, won it by 400 points.
And I do not want anybody to be under the misconception that I've got any sort of bad taste in my mouth over anything that happened at the World Championships or didn't happen at the World Championships. I am very realistic about where I stand in that hierarchy of shooters. And, and I left everything out there on the range, and you could have given me any rifle and the result would have stayed the same. I don't want to enter into a debate that makes me look like I've got sour grapes about anything, because I haven't. That's not me. I'm very happy to look at my performance as me competing against myself, not against anybody else.
I mean, there's an interesting thread running somewhere on someone's forum, and the element of gaminess was mentioned. Was it gaming? I think it called it, or game.
Oh, is this over the whole Hunter series thing?
Yeah. And there's a few people fascinating.
I've been watching that from the sidelines. That's quite interesting.
And for those that the word game, being gaming, and I've accused people of being gaming over the years. Gaminess typically is something you see demonstrated at the very, very top few percent of the scoring within events. These are people who are so good that they almost surrender. I'll just say it because I've got to say it. They surrender a tiny bit of the sportsmanship for the potential of edging ahead of someone else. we've been at Orion when someone starts running down the range shouting, "He's strapped to the floor," and all that nonsense that people do. And that's born out of the pressure of being in that top percent or couple of percent, where literally there's nothing dividing you apart from which way the wind blows or the fact that someone makes a mistake. Look at Italy last year. Time. Someone came second just because of time. It wasn't a representation of the skill or their ability to shoot targets. It was just time management or whatever.
That was 15 seconds, not even time management.
Yeah, the reason I'm saying this is because those people that know you and follow you know that you never pretend to be the person that wants to be the most winningest. You're all about healthy participation in the sport, competing and doing your absolute best. I mean, what is it you have on your scope cap? Is it on your cheat sheet? Just do your best. So you're fortunate that you covered it from a different angle to a lot of these very highly competitive individuals who we've seen strop off ranges and have tantrums and go home and all that sort of stuff. So
I have my moments, but it's usually because I'm disappointed with myself for something rather than anything else.
But the point I'm making is there's people who, if they hadn't produced there's people that if they didn't perform in America would come out with every excuse in the world because they're at a level where they're very disappointed themselves because they expect to be at the very, very, very top. Whereas I think you're much more humble than that in that you approach it you said yourself, I was just happy to be there and it was a great experience and all that positive stuff. So I don't think that was a long way around me basically saying I don't think anyone would think that you opted out of the conversation because you didn't want to seem like you were disadvantaged by changing rifles. It's one of those things you will never know. You will never know whether you'd have shot better. I had this conversation with you almost immediately afterwards. You will never know whether you would have shot better with or without the elite, whether you scored higher. Me personally, I think there's technical benefit from that platform. The elite is phenomenal, and I think you'd have done better. I can say that because I'm an observer. I don't want you to comment on it because then that undermines the wonderful thing you just said. But I get it, and it was noble of you to opt out of the last podcast because I saw how difficult it was for you. But then equally, I don't think the conversation with Rob and I would have gone the way it did without you being the good cop and caveating things. I mean, I did a good job of caveating stuff, and I made this point to someone who I love and respect in the industry. We had a very grown-up conversation about what's happened, and I said I tried my hardest to explain that and caveat that no one's pointing the finger and saying that these are people that are being dishonest or the dishonest mistakes that are made and human and all that sort of stuff. So that wouldn't have happened if you were there. I think you'd have done that thing where you go, hang on, Si. What we need to do is we need to understand that me and Rob just needed to get it out there on paper. You always, because you're always thinking, you always knew there was a second part to that podcast, which is this now.
Yeah.
And it was almost an opportunity for us to sort of have a conversation, Rob and I, a conversation born out of what was ultimately frustration on Rob's part, for then it to give people the chance to go away and think about it. And I can genuinely say I am thoroughly satisfied, or I'm happy with some of the conversations that I've had in this last week or so. Some of the discussions that are out there, rifle federations, national rifle federations are having discussions now because it was like everyone was sat waiting. There was like the elephant in the room. Who's going to say there's a question over this? And people didn't want to. And Rob, fair play to him, he just went, I need to talk about this. And it's given people the confidence to have these conversations without a big stigma attached to it. Let's just talk about it. Let's have a conversation. Let's try and move it along. Yeah. I've been getting unsolicited emails from people saying, I just want to talk to you about that podcast. Brilliant. Dialogue, discussion. Let's do more of it. So this then becomes your opportunity to then see that discussion that's happened, put it into context. And if I'm being completely honest with you, mate, gives you a little bit more confidence that any thoughts you had on your personal views on something, if you had one or didn't, there was more people out there than just you saying it or thinking it. I'm not trying to put words in your mouth there because I know you've been very clear to say you haven't got a view on it, a position on it. I have, and I think that podcast helped me understand the situation a bit better.
Yeah, like I say, I'm genuinely conflicted on the topic, and one thing, my nearly 30 years since leaving university and being in the workplace has taught me is that if you don't know a topic very well, seek out the people that do know the topic very well and seek their guidance and advice on it. And what I've also learned in those nearly 30 years is that quite often those experts disagree. And and sometimes it's somewhere in between. So again, I don't want this podcast to turn into a debate about whether something is factually legal or something isn't. But yeah, no, I'm genuinely conflicted on it, and I just hope that in the fullness of time, however this one ends up, people are just treat each other as people that are genuinely trying to do their best as volunteers for the benefit of the sport.
I think what this second part of the podcast and this conversation does is it shows that what we're willing to do here is have grown-up conversations about these things and make it
the purpose of the podcast.
Remove any taboo and make it so that we can talk about this stuff without it having to be an us versus them or an adversarial thing.
Yeah.
How it can be a healthy thing for the benefit of the sport, and that anyone that feels aggrieved. I mean, in the past week, I've extended invitations to people to come on this podcast. Someone who said, well, Rob said this and that's not right. I said, well, come and tell us. It's not. We're not taking sides. It's a very small podcast which has more of a reach than I was expecting, to be honest. I mean, crikey. Conversations with Frank Galley about this podcast isn't something I was expecting to have when we first started it off. But if you're out there and you've got a view on it, we're not trying to steer the agenda or monopolise the discussions. Come and talk to us about it and come on this podcast and let's have a healthy discussion and see if what it is. It's just two guys who love the sport, who are good mates, who can be honest with each other.
I mean, now you mentioned Frank Galley, let's hope he doesn't think I'm a pussy for sitting on the fence.
Well, it's all right.
I wouldn't want to disappoint Frank.
It's all right. It's not you he's aiming at. You'd be right. Right. So,
but look, I mean, and when I'm talking about whatever comes out of this whole debate in the fullness of time, and not hanging people over it. I'm not directing that at you. I'm not directing that at Rob. I'm not directing it at the other actors that are involved in this play. I'm directing it at the other people out there that, unfortunately, there's enough of them out there that like to shoot people down and jump on a bandwagon and have a go at people. It's like, I just wish that those people are just, it's like, guys, if you want to level that sort of criticism of people, why don't you step up and try doing what we've all done over time? Yeah. If not, just.
I mean, it becomes so infantile.
Yeah, exactly.
Someone sent Rob a message. Do you know when you're at school and you used to write on a piece of paper, will you go on a date with me, and then get your mate to give it to a girl, and there's a yes or no, and they tick it and bring it back to you. Rob, bless him, he was getting messages off people saying that's Simon, and Rob's just like, you know him, just ring him up and tell him yourself. Stop being a fucking coward. Have a discussion with him. That's the thing, I'm at the end of a phone. I'm the easiest guy in the world to get hold of. And if they can't get hold of me, then get hold of you, and then you'll tell me to do something. I think those people they'll always be there. They want to see the world burn. Some of them want to make it about themselves. I get it. Either emotionally or financially, they want to be satisfying their needs. We've got to deal with these people, but come on, folks, just give it a rest.
It's interesting, this, because you're saying there's some people out there that want to see the world burn. And that's how some people are viewing you right now, in terms of Simon wants to see the world burn.
Absolutely not.
And it's like, you know, me and you have spent a lot of time together through the GBPRA, the stuff that we do shooting together with Jackal Firearms, Jackal Rifle Club, and all that sort of stuff. So I've got to know you very, very well over the years. And yeah, you're opinionated, very Marmite type of character. But one thing I do know, and guys, if you listen to this, this is one thing you need to understand about Simon. He wants to see things done for the benefit of the sport, to the exclusion, of personal gain. You don't believe me? I can hear you listening to me and watching me right now, sitting there going, yeah, Christian, he's a guys. It's like that's his motivation.
I scribbled down when you wrote conflict of interest. It's the most poignant sort of three words for my time involved in precision rifle and sort of competition shooting from an organisational point of view. It's been my biggest discomfort. The people who have significant conflict of interest within a sport, who are allowed a position within a decision-making function and are never challenged. And I think there's lots of people out there who really should be looking over the shoulder thinking, before I spout my mouth off about something, am I gaining from this?
Yeah.
That no one's ever been called foul on it. To this day, there's been one or two people who've been caught with a hand in the cookie jar. And it's been a sort of a watered down, very dampened down fire. But there are people who, I'm not going to lie to you, people who, what's the word I said to you? Oh, principles and morals. People who have no principles or morals, who are just looking to move themselves forwards. Financially, emotionally, crikey, I have people messaging Rob saying, that Simon, what an idiot. That same person had me on phone for him a few years ago, getting him out of bother. Oh, yeah, he's a good lad. Don't worry about it. So these people, they move, it's like a moving feast in terms of where they want their morals to land, where they want their standards to land. I'm someone who has a firm set of principles. I'll never surrender them. If it means being the most hated man in the sport, I'll never surrender them. I can sleep at night then. A lot of these people can't.
And the sad reality is people will be sat there listening to this and watching this going, well, yeah, you've got a vested interest in it as well. You own a firearms company.
Do you know how much money I've lost being involved in this industry? It's
unreal, all I'd say to those people that are sitting there thinking that is, do you think Simon's like not canny enough to realise that when he goes head on with people over these sorts of matters, he's probably doing damage to his business rather than supporting it. So that's just
being involved in precision rifle is one of the worst financial decisions I could make. Sponsor a shooting team, Jackal Rifle, the Team Jackal. Sponsor a shooting team to try and get people to work together as small groups and encourage manufacturers to work together. Cost me a fortune. Sponsoring events. I've had my hands burnt with that, with dealing with match organisers that are all about money and not about principle. I can safely say some of the nicest people I've ever met in the industry are passionate about precision rifle. You being one of them. And it's those people that motivate me to keep fighting to make sure that the cream rises to the top, and then it doesn't become some sort of insular. What's that thing called? Illuminati meeting in their underpants and shaking hands to try and benefit their own causes. We need to get more people into the sport, and the only way that will happen is if they see that it's being run for all the right reasons by the right people, and the right people benefit it. I've said about kids and new people into sport and stuff. The amount of money I've put, it's not about me. You've raised it so, but the amount of money I've put into trying getting kids into sport. Anyway, let's park that. Everything you've heard is complete true. I'm a complete arsehole. Don't ever buy me a drink at the bar. But that's the thing, you need characters. And I'll never say I'm not one. On the subject of characters, we left the GPRA about the same sort of time for a number of reasons, which we won't go into now, but we had our views. I had my views on things, how things should go, and when I wasn't really convinced that was the way it was going, I sort of made me excuses and what have you. You left at the same sort of time. So Do you want to talk about the IPRF now? It's quite a poignant segue. If you talk about where you've been in the journey with the IPRF.
So I was invited into the IPRF by Rob Ramsden back in around about January, February of 2022. And that was in the run-up to the World Championships in Hungary, as they were.
We had stickers made, didn't we? I'm off to Hungary.
And Rob had a lot on his plate, and he needed somebody who could look after social media, could look after communications out to the public, the shooting community. It was a lot of work for him to take on when he was trying to support the setting up of the first ever Precision Rifle World Championships. And he'd seen the job I'd done for the GBPRA, and invited me on board. And baptism of fire straight into Hungary's cancelled, and we need to find a different venue and everything. And there was comps to manage.
Under fire as well. Having flaming trebuchet flying over the top of us.
And we went through that sort of similar way to the GBPRA. We went through that initial first phase of fighting fires and dealing with the naysayers and the people that wanted to tear it down before it even got off the ground. And we managed that situation very well. Then we, on the back of the success of France, we had a lot of positive media on the back of that. And then we were straight into preparations for Italy. And Italy was an opportunity to really build on that foundation and positively promote the IPRF and that world view of the sport, the world organization of the sport. And that was awesome as well. Then USA came along, and I'm already starting to think there's other things that I'd like to start getting interested in now. Jackal Rifle Club being one of them, the focus on the academy that we're setting up there, some other projects that are in discussion right now as well. There's only so much time you can dedicate to things, and I'm a great believer in if you're going to do something, you've got to put the effort in and do it well. And I felt like the same with the GBPRA after so long doing the job. It's good to freshen up an organisation periodically. You need people to move out, fresh blood to come in. There's risk with that. Mm-hmm. But there's also the benefit of that with, people that are freshly motivated, new view on things, bring new things to the table, new ways of doing things, and hopefully advance things forward. So it was always in the back of my mind that I would support the IPRF until they need me, or until there was somebody that I could recommend to them to take over from me. And then when I went to the World Championships and I saw the work that Camden Powers did, I've already mentioned Camden at the top of the show. I was just blown away by her enthusiasm, the content that she creates, the way that she puts out that content on social media, the connection she's got, how she gets on with everybody. And I was just like, she is the better candidate for the job than me. I was just like, that's what the IPRF needs now. And so when I got home to the UK, gave it a week or two, got in touch with Marcus Olsen, the president of the IPRF, and I just said, look, Marcus,
you're missing the junkie. You're missing getting drunk at Doncaster. Very drunk at Doncaster. Yeah. That was part of your decision-making process. The hangover as well. I think the hangover is what made you resign from the IPRF, because that was a cracker.
We did get drunk at Doncaster and had a good time and talked over some of these things, didn't we? But I just felt like the time was right to move on, to dedicate time to some of these other projects that I'm interested in now. And I just felt Camden was the perfect person to take over. Now, I understand that Marcus has spoken to Camden. I'm hoping that those conversations are going well, Camden.
This is how you find out. Congratulations.
Yeah, Camden, I know Marcus already spoke to you. If you don't want the job, that's great, because I'll support Marcus and the team for as long as they need me. But I hope you do take on the role, because I think you'd be brilliant at it, much better than I've ever being at it, and you'll get my full support through it as well. And I probably should have given Camden a shout before doing this podcast.
You can blame Johnny Walker for that.
Yeah, everybody knows Camden. Everybody loves Camden, so I'm sure there's no.
I mean, it's made the decision a lot easier now, isn't it?
I mean, yeah, and it just goes to show you nobody's dispensable. There's always somebody out there who can come in and do the job that you're doing.
There's got to be, like you say, that healthy progress and evolution.
Yeah.
Biggest observation I have from working in big organisations with lots of risk is that you don't surrender your organisational memory. And I think I've seen that happen where there's lots of change at the same time. And that's the art form of being a leader. I say leader. This is another podcast I could talk about leadership and Jocko Willenick and all that sort of nonsense. You've got to be a leader in these circumstances, and you've got to make decisions that aren't particularly certainly not in your best interest, but for the benefit of the greater picture. And I think that's really, really important that people are focused on that, as opposed to what you'd read in the we can't call them red tops. There's no red tops anymore in the UK. It's the tabloids, we call them.
The tabloids, yeah.
No, thanks, mate. I mean, selfishly, it's good to have a little bit more of you, because you were a very busy man spinning lots of plates. We've got lots going on in the UK, and people that shoot with us or talk to us on a regular basis know what we're doing. You mentioned the academy, and we've got all sorts of stuff going on. More plates in the air that I think we can spin at the moment, but we'll get there. Yeah, I mean, what's without sort of, I know you've said a few things. What's the future hold for you then, as Christian, the competitive shooter?
So, so the World Championships. So for a long time now, I've enjoyed competing in factory division, and certainly took my opportunity when it was there to be taken to qualify for the Great Britain team to shoot in the USA finals. But again, I think I mentioned this earlier. I don't see myself as challenging other people. I see myself.
Yeah, you explained where you sit very well. Yeah.
I want to improve as a shooter. That's what it's about. I've only been shooting for only been a firearms.
But you don't stand in the shower saying to yourself, "I'm going to be the winningest."
Yeah, no, I'm not yes, I would like to qualify for the Great Britain.
You'd like to, as your cheat sheet says, you want to do your best every time you go.
Yeah,
and that's, as a mantra goes, I can get with that.
Yeah, and I can measure myself in, I do a job that's all about targets and measuring and all that sort of stuff. You know what I mean? So yeah, I'd like to be in the top 50. I'd like to be in the top 25. I'd like to get in the top 10. But it's about challenging myself and improving. It's like I'm going to make sure that at that precision rifle match, I'm going to follow my process on every stage.
Yeah,
I'm not going to make any mental errors. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. And if I follow that through, every trigger press is going to be a clean trigger press. If I follow through on all of that, then I'll improve.
And you are very true to yourself. And I've seen that firsthand. Christ. I remember walking over to the range to you once trying to have a bit of banter, and you just went, "Simon, you need to go away."
I'm just like, sorry, mate.
I was like, "Okay, mate, I'm all right." Okay, because you were in the zone, you were going through your motions, you knew what you needed to do. So you are, like you say, competing with yourself first and foremost. But then you're on the range for the right reasons. In that you're the sort of guy that would, I think, surrender points for the sake of helping someone else out personally. You would never say that, and because we're all very harsh to ourselves when we look at how we are as people. So you're one of the good guys on the range. You're not one of the Johnny Rock and Roll. Let's just set everything on fire and hope I come out on top sort of guys.
Thank you for saying that. But so I competed in the USA finals in factory division, but for a long time now. And if I hadn't have qualified for the Great Britain team in factory division, I'd have made this change at the end of last year. I'd have made this change in January. But I always wanted to move into open division. Not because I think that I've got a better chance of qualifying in open division. In fact, I've probably got a worse chance of qualifying for anything in open division. But I felt like I'd taken my development to a certain stage shooting in factory division, that for me now to make another step forward in my performance, I needed to have that fully adjustable rifle. With the perfect balance point, being able to run, arca plates with bag riders and all the different accoutrements that come from shooting open that you're restricted from using in the IPRF.
Yeah, you've been a minimalist for the past 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, using a rifle that's very good as a precision rifle.
Yeah.
But it's designed to do a bit of that and a bit of something else, and it's not tuned perfectly for any of those. So I mean, I've got my B14R over my shoulder there that I'm now putting an MDT Elite chassis. I released a video on my YouTube channel about the installation of that last night. Got that all perfectly balanced. Been dry firing it today. It's just like, it's amazing when I can just put the bag down on put the rifle down on a bag, point it at the target, and it just sticks there. I've stuck a red dot on top. I've been practicing today with a bag rider and tripod for tripod rear. Just all these sorts of things that in factory division were really difficult for me to do. And I'm going to have to learn new skills, and I'm going to have to retrain certain.
It keeps you fresh, doesn't it? You've opened up at another level on a computer game where it freshens it up.
But if I was at this level on the overall leaderboards in factory division, I want to see now, can I move on from that and move up? And again, I'm realistic to understand talent plays a big part in this game. And a lot of it is about practice and application and so on. But there's an element of talent and age, physical ability, and so on and so forth.
You'll be veteran soon, won't you? So you'll be all right.
Well, this is what I keep saying to people. I'm like, I'm in training for the next 5 years when I can go to senior division. And then I'm going to wipe the floor with everybody, mate.
Absolutely.
I'm going to wipe the floor with everybody. I'll have 5 years of training for senior division. But I'm realistic with myself as well. So, but yeah, I've done factory for 4 years. I want to now shoot. It's interesting that hunter debate that's been going on in the stalking directory, and people saying, "Oh, it's an arms race, or it's a gear race, and all this sort of stuff." It's like, yeah, I want to be deep in that arms race. I want to be deep in that race. I want all the best kit.
Yeah.
So I already believe that I've got the rifle, got the big arrows. Now I've got the MDT chassis, got the Schmidt and Bender glass on top of it. I've got the Nyload tripod. I have got top tier equipment. And with the custom ammo that you guys are going to produce, what you calling the custom ammo?
Jackal ammo. Jackal ammo. It's Sunday names Jackal ammunition, but it'd be Jackal ammo on the box.
153 grain A-tips. Mate, I'm like, the only thing that's going to hold me back now is me.
No pressure there.
That's where I want to be.
It's going to be interesting. I mean, I've been fortunate to have front row seat in your journey through precision rifle and bunny bashing and deer and all sorts of stuff. So it'll be interesting to see where you go next. Certainly another good chapter for the book, that's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, outside of competitive shooting, you're still a man that's got a lot of other outlets when it comes to this sport. I mean, we've done an awful lot in setting a club up recently and bringing on a new range and setting up an academy and all that sort of stuff. And you're very passionate about making sure people out there have the right instruction, and we've spoken about this, about trying to get people in and teaching them the right way, teaching them a positive way to go about it from the outset, as opposed to either fumbling around themselves, trying to make the best of it from YouTube videos and things that they've read, and all that. It's an important thing, I think. It's a piece that Rob and I spoke about on one of the previous podcasts about coaching. And one of the things I've noticed, and one of the many reasons we go on, is the amount of time you volunteer to other people to help them come along. It's great to see it happening up and down the country. There's lots of instruction coming out now, and people that are getting involved in trying to develop people. I think going forwards, it's something that I think these big organisations internationally and nationally should look at and say, what are we doing to try and give the best instruction we can to new shooters and juniors. It was great to see the British Young Shooters Association invited to Pro Shoot with the GPRA last weekend.
That's been very
Fantastic
quiet,
stuff.
though. I haven't heard any. I haven't seen.
I spoke to a few people that were there, and they said they did a great
Right, okay.
time.
Good event, was it? Yeah.
And the weather held out as well. So
yeah, good.
And it's great to see that. What I'd encourage people to do is make sure we're doing this as professionally as we can do. You know, if we're out there and instructing young people, let's make sure we're doing it all properly from the outset. Let's not leave ourselves open to criticism. We've got great infrastructure in this country in terms of, you know, as what many hats, I run a training company. So when we're doing training, we've got anti-doping policies and child safeguarding policies and all this sort of nonsense in place.
Yeah.
We've got the NRA who are the infrastructure for what we do, Centre Fire Shoot in the UK. They have club instructors, they have range officers, qualifications and courses and all that sort of stuff. And I'd encourage people out there who are listening to this that saying, I want to start instructing, I want to try and help people, I want to try and add a bit of value to new people coming into the sport. Please do look at all these things because it's a fantastic infrastructure we've got in front of us. Find yourself, your local club, if it's NRA affiliated, will help you become an NRA instructor. And then, like I say, if you're doing it under an organisation, make sure you've got all your bits in place to make sure you're doing it as professionally and ethically as possible. Let's try and promote good practice in everything we do. Let's try and make sure that we build foundations and structures that are going to last the fullness of time. And let's make sure the right people are involved as well. It's great to see some of the people volunteering the time going down to like Pro Shoot at the GPRA. I'm in the group where people talk about it and it's great. I'll do this, I'll do that, I'll do this, I'll do that. And let's try and do more of that, and let's try and plan ahead and make sure we can get as many people there as possible. Shame some of the manufacturers to come and get involved in these things. Shame some of the importers and distributors to get involved in them as well, because they've got a part to play in it. And I think from a selfish point of view, watching you and certainly Rob instruct people when we're running ranges, keep up the good work, mate. It's good to have you maintain your enthusiasm in the sport and all the stuff you do on social media. There's a lot of people looking at you for how to go about either getting the sport or developing. So selfishly, it's nice to have a little bit of Christian back from the IPRF.
Yeah, it's interesting what you say about the whole social media piece. I mean, I've probably said it before on the podcast, but I remember when I was getting into shooting. In fact, before I had my FAC, and I was thinking about applying and getting into it and everything, a lot of my education, because I didn't know anybody who shot, didn't know anybody, didn't know hunters, no target shooters, maybe knew a few people that did a bit of clay pigeon shooting, but that was it. So a lot of my education did come from YouTube, and you know, I always watched those videos and then reflected back on them when I was actually shooting and thinking, you know, I should put a video out about what I'm doing, and maybe somebody will watch it and also will get interested and want to get into it. And that was probably my biggest motivation for getting behind the GBPRA and the IPRF as the media officer, because I thought that is something that I think I could give back into the sport and help people to get into it.
You and I have had this exact conversation a few weeks ago. I can't remember where we were, but about that medium of, if you can't get someone on a range, how can you give them as much information as possible? Christ, I remember back when I wrote the PR1 syllabus for the GPRA back in the day, talking about getting Alex White doing videos and trying to get him to do instructional videos. I mentioned Alex. I didn't mean to do that either.
You mentioned him did you mention him last
podcast?
You didn't, did you? Oh, you've broken your streak.
getting Alex to do instructional videos and getting them on YouTube and making them available to members and stuff, so people could try and do. There's lots of people doing practice, dry fire practice, or practice in their own immediate area, backyards, whatever it might be. So I think that thing about there's lots of talented shooters in the UK, and there's lots of videos out there of them shooting competitions, but it's something Christian and I and Rob have spoken about in terms of our club. It's really important that we try to get as much out of some of these talented shooters as we can, and try and get them to do the classes and the instructional videos and training courses, if they're run properly. Absolutely are the best thing we can do. Make them affordable, make them legitimate, and get people to come and do this training. And we've got some. I'll be straight. I'm not going to name anyone. We've sat with a beer and we've said this guy needs to do some training. That guy needs to do some training. These are people that are nice guys. They've got the right attitude. They're not going to turn people off by some of the sort of strong views they might have, or the personality failures that they might have. And we've got some great people in the UK, I think, who could really, really, really be fantastic instructors. If you're one of these people, I'm not going to lie to you, if you're one of the people that we're talking about without talking about you, and you're thinking, do you know what, I really fancy it, I will put you through your NRA club instructor course, just to get you doing more instruction and helping people out, and try and make it as affordable as possible to give these kids and new shooters as much instruction as we can. And again, I'd look at the GPRA to try and formalise that and say, let's look at some sort of coaching system, some sort of training system, and try and get people qualified to be proper instructors, so that when you're getting instruction, you're getting it from a safe perspective. Because like everything, if you've not got qualification, realistically, you shouldn't be instructing. I'll be dead straight. That's just how the world spins.
There's a lot of people, a lot of shooters out there that take out the sport and don't give back into it. They're participants only, customers of
customers.
Customers of the product.
Yeah, I've said it for years. Yeah.
And that's fine. Not everybody can be instructing, organising, support, doing whatever it is that needs to be done just to put on matches, put on events, run clubs and so on. And that's fine. It's not a problem. But yeah, we do need more people.
There are people out there that really, really are enthusiastic about growing the sport and developing things. What I'm saying to you is, if you haven't got the vehicle to do it yourself, just, again, like Christian said, it'll end up costing me money, but anything I can do to help anyone become a coach, get instructing, affiliate themselves with the national structure, which is NRA club instructor or range officer, all the different things you can do to make sure you're safeguarding. You CRB, we've had conversations about like CRB checks and stuff recently. All that stuff you need to do to make sure that you're training to a professional standard. Anything I can do to help anyone, just let me know. I am your humble servant. The more coaches and instructors in this country, the better.
Yeah, agreed. You keep referring to talented shooters.
Not doing it. Not a chance, mate. Not a chance.
What?
You could ask me to name people, it ain't gonna happen.
No. That's not what I was trying.
I think for me, here we go. So this is my training head. So you've got to have an aptitude. You've got to have an element of understanding the subject matter. You don't have to be the most winningest to be the best instructor.
No, that's not what I'm talking about.
Yeah. However, you do have to have technical ability if you're going to demonstrate things like positional work, and you're not listening for the strike on steel. You're looking for the technical fundamentals of it.
Yeah.
If your fundamentals aren't there, you're going to struggle to teach good practice.
A world-class footballer who's also a world-class coach is a very rare thing, and that's the same in any sporting.
It is, but cultivating coaches out of experienced competitive shooters is the way to do it. Is to have a pathway for someone who is stepping out of shooting, having done well, and then teaching them how to be a coach. Lawrence Barnes and I, many years ago, had a conversation about the psychology of sport and getting people in to do coaching in relation to the psychological aspects of it. And I think you can make experienced shooters really good coaches. And as long as the infrastructure is there to safeguard these people, to make sure that they don't do or say something that's going to damage their professional integrity. Because we've all chatted shit on the side of a range and we've all said something inappropriate. But I've had it where we've got kids on the range and I've had to say to people, stop it, that language won't be tolerated. On it goes. That's an infrastructure thing. You can have the most capable, inspirational person who could teach the most Jedi thing to do on a range that will make you the best shooter ever. But unless they're able to either manage their own discipline or the organisation supporting them in a framework and a structure, they're going to come stuck. But again, like anything, if you're instructing people in the UK, there's an expectation of what you've got behind you. Typically, it's qualification. Secondly, it's a set of policies that protect you. And that's where home office clubs come in. We've always banged on about home office clubs. They've got all this. They've all got policies and NRA policies and insurance and all that sort of stuff. I pay a fortune to be a training instructor, to have a training company, pay a fortune. You know, people need to understand that there's no more dangerous thing in this world than an over-enthusiastic amateur. That's what I was once told. And it's absolutely true. But being positive and looking going forwards, those people out there who've got an aptitude or an interest in instructing and they want to try and find a way into it, I'm your huckleberry. Give me a shout and anything I can do to help you. The more coaches and instructors, the better.
And that's absolutely correct and very valid. But what I was actually
sorry, mate.
That's all right. No. I think it was good that you said all that, and I agree with it. But what I was driving at was quite often when you talk about bringing new people into the sport, juniors and new shooters, you always then move immediately to the talented shooters, that bringing talented shooters into the sport, and I know it's just because you're thinking about your pyramid, and we've been involved in the organisation of the sport at the top levels, and a lot of our focus has been on those talented shooters. But it's also about, we see a lot of it, don't we, as well, where you've got the not so talented shooters, the people who just want to enjoy the sport, don't want to even shoot a match, just want to come along and try it out in a friendly environment. And it's just as important to bring those guys in and help and support
100%.
them. And we do that.
100%. And equally, yeah, you're right. You need an element of talent because and I'm talking from I'm 2 levels above my own humble position. I'm talking about a national organisation needs to be looking at its most talented coaches. But at an absolute grassroots level, then you're absolutely right. It isn't founded just on that. I'd have 5 enthusiastic, motivated instructors over 5 talented, high maintenance ones every day. People aren't stupid. They see through veneer and they see through people trying to project an image that they're the winningest and all that sort of nonsense. And you spend a bit of time with someone on the side of a hill or in a bar and you see the character flaws quite quickly. Which is why I don't play very well with a lot of people, because I've had these conversations. I've had 3 cans of Madry now, so I can tell you. And I think we as grown-ups need to manage that situation. We need to make sure that people come into the sport in a wholesome environment where they're getting the best quality instruction they can, not necessarily for the most talented or to being the most talented or most competitive, but they're getting the best, most consistent level of instruction possible, which is why I applaud the PR1 thing that's out there.
Yeah.
And how it's offering some consistency. There needs to be more of that. When I wrote PR1, there was a PR2 and a PR3 as well.
The team are moving that forward, isn't it?
Yeah. So let's see some more modular training and instruction for precision rifle. Again, there's some great stuff happening out there that I'm confident may or may not have happened because I shut my mouth up about it. I'll take that as a result all day. I don't need to have the monopoly on doing great stuff. If people out there want to steal any ideas or share any learning or pick our brains or whatever, we just want people to enjoy themselves and get involved in the sport, not take it too seriously until the point when they have to take it seriously because they're really good. And then that's where the organisations come in, your national associations and your international associations, to try and facilitate you shooting against the best in the world. I can certainly get you shooting against the best in the north of England, but getting you shooting against some chap in a cowboy hat with a big belt buckle in America is beyond me.
The sport's also coming to a very interesting crossroads as well, I feel, because it is an amateur sport by and large, and it will maintain its position as an amateur sport for as long as I can see. You get the odd unicorn out there that's a fully supported, fully sponsored, paid up shooter who doesn't need to work. All they have to do is shoot. I get that. But by and large, it's an amateur sport with very limited support to shooters in terms of gear and equipment and financial support. But over the past 3 World Championships, you do see that desire to be the top nation forefront in people's minds. And the US team, the USPRA Precision Rifle Association, has, first of all in Italy and then in the USA, sort of really moved that competitiveness, that desire to win all of the trophies to another level. Their qualification events or their qualification method for the USA this year was to take all the top shooters that were competing in specific divisions, and they would take the top placed position in each division shooter, and then everybody else in that division had to have a score within 95% of that person's score to form part of that division's team. And if they didn't fall within 95% of that range, somebody might correct me if I've got this wrong, but I'm pretty sure this was how they ran the qualification program. Then what they do is they literally just look at the overall leaderboard, and whoever was in the highest position who hadn't qualified in their division, they would be invited to move into that division to form the team. So effectively taking the best shooters in the country that were attempting qualification to form the strongest team that the USA could form. Now, there's purists out there, and I remember we had this debate in the GBPRA at the time where it was like we had a conversation, didn't we? It's like, do we set our qualification method up so that you declare what division you're shooting the qualification season in and you stay in it? Or do we let people shoot whatever divisions they want to in whatever combination of matches and take their 2 highest scores in each of those divisions, and that's a qualification score? So you could effectively put a qualification score in open, factory, if you're a senior in senior, if you serve in military as well, in military, I nearly said something controversial there, but I won't get in trouble. So I'll stop there. But and then the GBPRA, do we then say, right, well, you've got multiple scores, qualification scores, but we think you're better suited in this division. This is where we need you to build the strongest team. And that was how we sort of landed, wasn't it? Now, there was
a door number 3 as well, don't forget.
Go on.
Just an invitational.
Well, we did debate with you.
But you've got to trust the grown-ups to make the right decisions with that. That's the difference. You've got lots of personalities to manage then. You've got lots of hard conversations to have with people saying, look, I know you did better than him, but we're taking him because that's advanced level shit, that's proper.
And the invitational piece in the early days of the GBPRA, when we were getting the team together for France, that was more our plan B.
Plan B, yeah. If we don't get enough, absolutely.
Because we were worried that we wouldn't have enough matches that would give us the scores to put onto a qualification leaderboard. But it's still, in the end, we ended up just having to run the qualification series ourselves, didn't we?
Yeah.
So that's how the USA did it. Put together a very strong team, a very winning team. I mean, they took all the team trophies and everything.
They were the winningest, weren't they?
They were the winningest.
Yeah.
Now, what you're now starting to see, and it's happening in the UK right now, for the 2-2 World Championships in the UK next year, is you're seeing those top shooters in other divisions. We saw it last year as well, actually, for qualification for the USA team as well. People switching divisions, thinking, where have I got a better chance to qualify? Yeah, you're seeing that again this year. But what you're seeing this year is a slightly no, it happened last year as well, but a dynamic whereby it's not just about where's my best chance of qualification, because we're talking about the top shooters here that should qualify anyway, whatever division they try to qualify in. But they're actually saying, what's the best way to go to those World Championships with the strongest division? Getting together with the mates, with the other top shooters, let's form a qualification push so we can then go to the World Championships in that division with the strongest team possible and dominate. And this is where I think the next controversy will start to come from those people that aren't competing for those top positions, and they'll probably call it gaming. Oh, you're gaming the rules or something like that.
Don't use that word.
But it's like, what do we want? What do we want out of this? Do we want every year to put forward the best team possible
group of individuals with a chance to win?
To the benefit of the nation, because we want to take pride in our nation achieving something? Or do we want to treat it as amateurishly?
Participation trophy type.
Participation trophy.
Everyone has a fair crack at it, but then we will continue to underperform. Me personally, I think everyone out there in podcast land understands the different options you put in there. For me, that pyramid that I love banging on about, you're ruthless at the top to get your elite level shooters shooting. You come up with a strategy that means you compete at the highest level.
Yeah.
However, as a dad with two girls who love to get involved in stuff, I want everyone to have a fair crack at it. Thankfully, we're not involved in the association that has to make these difficult decisions. And we look at them with respect and love and all that sort of jazzy stuff as to how they're going to deal with it. We had a conversation very, very early in these podcasts about Japan gymnastics. I think it might be me and you or me and Rob. It's me and Rob, actually. Whatever, they need a strategy. What I want to see is a strategy.
Yeah. I
want to see a plan that's 5 years in the making. And I say 5 years because then it gives you two worlds and a bit of overlap. And let's have a discussion. There's lots of people out there with lots of experience competing at international levels. There are people like Rob Ramsden who has a vast, detailed working understanding of Olympic and international sporting structures and all that crap. I don't. I struggle to find my own socks in my own house. I'm not going to be able to signpost people to policies on equality and all that nonsense. But I think you've got to plan ahead. Whatever you choose to do, you've got to be bold. And this is where we talk about leaders involved in organisations, not just bureaucrats and managers and people that are looking to milk the bit of stuff out they want before they move on somewhere else. Let's be leaders. Let's make big decisions.
Yeah.
Let's say the weight of the country is on my shoulders, so I'm going to make a bold decision.
Yeah.
And do you know what?
Like the US did.
If someone makes a bold decision and it's for the right reasons, I will back them 100%, even if they fuck it up.
USA made a bold decision. This is how we're going to run our qualification to, yes, give those people that are dedicated to a certain division a crack at the whip. But we're going to go with what we consider the most winningest team, the team with the best opportunity to win.
Yeah.
And what I don't like about what's happening in what I'm seeing in the UK right now, I appreciate the intentions of the shooters, but I don't like that the shooters are having to progress that.
Yeah.
I want to see
a strategy.
I'd like to see the strategy.
Yeah.
That puts together the best team. I was having this conversation in the USA with Ben McElwain, and I was saying, look at our team across all the divisions and how, if you just racked and stacked every shooter based on results, where every shooter stands on that leaderboard, there are more shooters above on that leaderboard, albeit in open division, above other shooters that are here. And if we want the team that's got the best opportunity to bring home trophies, we've got to focus in that upper echelon. We're looking in the wrong place for our shooters.
We've said it a few times about having subject matter experts involved in some of these processes. I am not a fan of competitive shooters being involved in committees. Never been a fan. I'm a fan of the enthusiasm and passion that they bring in, but committees, and Rob Ramsden made this point far more eloquent than I could ever do. Committees and decision-making structures should be formed by subject matter experts who, if they happen to be competitive shooters who've got the right attitude to act without a conflict of interest and act impartially, then brilliant. I think at some point you've got to start saying we need some geeks in here now. We need some people that understand sporting strategy. These associations are all businesses now. The GPRA might be a CIC, but it's a business. It's a business with members who are customers who pay money into it. And if there's people out there that can add value, if you're out there listening in podcast land, you've got some understanding of sporting structures and strategies and international events and all that sort of stuff, come and get involved and add some value, because what we want is the best possible team put together in the best possible way for the best possible interest of growing the sport by example. And if you and I can see this, you're quite clever, but I'm not the brightest, then other people out there will see it as well. So perhaps it's time to have that discussion now and say, what is the long-term strategy here? Let's look at the Japan gymnastics model. Have we got a plan?
Exactly that. Yeah. So
cool.
Qualification event this weekend. Wish everybody all the best at that. Not going to be able to make it. Family commitment Saturday night and Sunday. But I am looking forward to coming over to Jackal Rifle Club at the Quarry on Saturday.
It's only because you're getting new rifles. That's the only reason
why. To try out my new rifle and to pick up a new rifle. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. I'll do a big reveal on that in my next YouTube video next week. But yeah, I'm looking forward to. Is it going to be our first NRL 2-2 match?
Yeah. We've got 3 academy kids shooting it, which would be great. So all good stuff. Yeah, it'd be good.
And our first GBPRA 2-2 match as well, because there's some extra stages on the back of it as well.
Yeah, Rob's doing all that. He's been sending me loads of pictures of things, and I've just been.
Well, don't tell me, because I'm competing for points. So.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
Rob's all over.
Don't tell me about it. I don't want to know, but I'm looking forward to that.
It's. I started writing at 8:20. We're 2 minutes away from being 2 hours. We need to knock this on the head now.
Do you remember when you were just like me at school? I bet. Do you remember when you were in class at school?
Yeah.
And you used to just keep the teacher talking about any old shit you could
until the bell
about, so that they didn't actually teach you anything. Do you remember doing that?
Yeah.
I was the master at that, mate. And I was determined to be the guest, because I feel like a guest tonight.
Okay.
I was determined to be the guest on the podcast that broke the record for length. And I reckon I keep looking at the clock. I reckon I must.
Yeah, it's the longest one we've done.
Yeah, nice.
Rob will be devastated, because Rob had ambitions of doing a 3-hour podcast, and I said to him, he's a madman. Mate,
I've won some this year.
It's been a long one. It's been a very interesting one. I hope the people out there listening get what we're trying to say. Again, if you're out there and you don't agree with us, please just let us know. Drop us a line, have some conversation. It's not the final word. That'd be a cool name for a podcast, the final word. But it's not the final word. It's the start of hopefully discussions on things, and trying to make sure that the right decisions are made and the right movements are made, and people see how great a sport this is and they get involved. Right, that's it. Done. I'm going to knock on the head now. Mate, thank you for telling us about America. Thank you for your honesty. Thank you for everything you do, and keep being the good dude that you are in the sports. I'll let you have the final say, because you always like to say the farewells, don't
you? Before you criticise anybody, think about their motivations. And more than that, be kind to one another.
what he said. Thanks, folks. We'll see you on the next one. Take care.
Take care. Bye.